Hi, my name is Keitner. I'm a photographer and I'm one of the newer members of IMAGO Gallery. I have an exciting black and white show coming up by the title of Sans Souci. Sans Souci is a French expression for basically carefree or not too worried about reality. It's an expression that's used to define a frame of mind. The frame of mind being a relaxed attitude about physical and emotional evolution. As we get older, we have to deal with our spiritual and physical changes, and I'm trying to celebrate the obvious changes of the aging process. By celebrating, I mean I've decided and chosen to photographically illustrate that celebration. So you will notice in my work that I've decided to focus close up on specific body parts that I believe are very beautiful. I've learned throughout my professional career as a photographer that all of us, every single one of us, has something very special that we can celebrate about ourselves. So even though you see them as individual pieces of art, they are really just part of a much, much bigger picture. So the bigger picture is not just the two-dimensional image that you're seeing here, but the three-dimensional reality of the model. My photographic process is still as if I was using film in the camera rather than a card, which means that I have to plan the picture and what I'm going to do and how it's going to look before I actually press the shutter. So the lighting, the posing, the conceptualizing all takes place before I take the picture, not after I introduce that into the computer. This is another piece that you'll see in my show, and I think it's really indicative of my whole philosophy at this point about the photographic process and what it means to me. I believe that life is not clear-cut, it's not well-defined, it's not easily identifiable all the time. And I think that you'll see in this photograph a representation of that where parts of it are very sharp and in focus and other parts are softer, and there are things that may look abstract, and that to me is a very important part of the process for me. My career in photography in Rhode Island started out as a straight portrait photographer. I had a studio on the east side where I was doing black and white portraits, primarily of children, and they were very well defined and were very representational, and they were great and it was a lot of fun. But that experience led me to where I am now with images like this. I started my portrait work with this type of photography. Studio work, a lot of kids, a lot of families, and it was pretty straightforward, even though it was really exciting at the time and it really worked for everybody involved. But it was basically a commercial endeavor. About 15 years ago, I started traveling to Cuba and I've made several trips, and in the process, I started taking street photographs. This is one of them. Still black and white. I'm still totally committed to black and white photography, totally committed to the images that black and white film and now the digital process gives me. Full disclosure, basically I'm colorblind. So black and white photography just seems to be a natural way for me to communicate. I'm not comfortable with color. I don't understand color. Even though I've painted, it's not, as I said, a natural process for me. This image in particular, which I totally love, represents that growth that I experienced traveling in that poverty-stricken country. I started seeing portraits and I started seeing people in a completely, literally different light. I've never liked artificial lighting, although in the studio it's necessary because you need dependable, constant, good light to get satisfying results in your work. On a street, it's a very different situation. You have natural light, but it changes all the time. So my current work, I really had to figure out a way to emulate natural light in an artificial setting, which is what I hope I've accomplished in lighting these detailed body parts that make it look like it's in a natural setting. Well, the most important part of this show for me, and I hope for people who take it in, is a new direction that I'm really interested in pursuing, and that is to illustrate to people, or to point out to people, that there's something beautiful and there's something special in each and every one of us. So going forward, I would really ideally like to explore this whole sans souci concept of people aging, being comfortable with themselves, being comfortable with their body, and celebrating those isolated parts that we don't see every day, or that we don't even think about, but photographing them, having a record of them at a time when it's not going to get any better, would be a wonderful thing for me to pursue, and for a subject to experience.